Hey, what's up, YouTubers? My name is eveRide. You can call me Tyler. We're getting personal like that, because I'm gonna basically tell you this whole thing, just like a good friend sits down and tells his friends about the adventure that I had. So what you're watching right now is footage from the adventure ride that I took with Mr. Val A, and he's a super cool guy. You know, from the beginning, one of the big issues of this is what format am I going to do this in. And I've written, and this, I'm gonna sound crazy, but I've written like 8 different iterations, 8 different drafts of this adventure, and it's been a ton of work, but none of them felt right. None of them felt like they were original, or they just, I'd start reading them and then I'd be like, and then I had this realization that when I was going to make it, and it was super boring. So, you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and wing it. We're gonna try that. And you know what? Sometimes I will read things out of the journal, but then I'll try to make them upbeat, obviously. So basically, 5,000 miles. 3 weeks on the road, met new people, saw a whole bunch of new things. It's always been this question of where do I even start? And the whole experience was so much more than just film and story, is more than motorcycles or dots on a map. And it's really been racking my brain, but you know what? The hardest part of the adventure, but the most important part of the adventure, is to start. And you know what? This isn't gonna be some award-winning production, but just like whether I'm telling the story about it or whether starting this adventure or any other, the most important thing is just to start and do it and get started. And you know what? Whatever happens, happens, and that's the beauty of it. That's the wonderment of the contrast that we find in our lives. So one of the reasons why I've wanted to get this perfect, just to get it out of the way in the beginning, is because I spent about $1,000 on this journey. I'll get the exact numbers for how much I spent on hotels and all that stuff, and all kinds of tips and all that stuff very soon. But I also spent about $1,000 on the KLR rebuild. Now this all came from my retirement savings, from my life savings. That is what we're living off of right now, besides the very little bit of money that I make from YouTube and Amazon. And this is my reserve tank before I go completely broke. So, that being said, my perception was that this series was very important to boost my channel. But you know what? I don't think it will, and I'm okay with that. And I'm okay to just be myself, and it doesn't need to get a million views, because whatever happens in the future happens. And just like on an adventure or any kind of thing in life, whatever happens, happens, and it's going to be beautiful. And you can make the best of the worst of any situation that you come across. I could be boo-hoo, or I could be stoked, because look at me, I'm staying home. I don't have to go to a job somewhere. I work like 10 hours a day on YouTube, but I do believe that it will all pay off. So anyway, let us get on with day one. That morning was a really difficult morning. I've had mornings where I've had people die. I've had mornings where I've broken bones and passed kidney stones and been stabbed and woken up wanting to die because I had massive stomach issues, and I've been fired. And there have been plenty of mornings when I've been so depressed that I didn't even want to get out of bed. But that morning, was a different kind of bad, almost. All those other things came from outside sources. That morning, the difficulty came because it was a choice that I was making. So the night before, I was up until about 1 o'clock just preparing the KLR, and Brent brought it over, and it was go time. It was pack everything on it. I had way too much stuff. I ended up leaving a lot of stuff behind, and in the end, I'm glad I did. I actually think I overpacked, and I'll get to all that eventually. But, it was interesting because once I got all that stuff packed on the KLR and kind of did a practice packing, I didn't think I'd sleep very well, but I slept really soundly. All that stress of trying to fit all that stuff in such a small area, it was over, and finally I could just snuggle with my wife and crash, and I totally did crash. I mean, that was a fantastic sleep, but that morning, going back to that morning, it was crazy. Basically, there was this mindset, like, my wife was going to work, my kids were going to the babysitters, and then I was going to do the freaking west coast of the United States, border to border, and be sleeping in strangers' homes and all this stuff. And suddenly there was this huge disconnect, and following the kids out the door to the car with all these hugs, it didn't make it any easier. We had kind of this theme for a long time in my house that we kept telling the kids, Daddy's going to be gone for a long time. And they still didn't understand. They got in the car and they just kind of gave these oblivious waves, and they were off to the babysitters because they were excited to see the new toys. So, that was hard for me. I wouldn't see my kids, these people who I'm raising, who I'm investing my whole life into, for 3 weeks. And and although it's not super unsafe, there was a possibility, there's a risk of death in anything that you do. But when you're riding a motorcycle 5,000 miles, that's quite a few micromorts to be racking up. But and 3 weeks away from the family and 5,000 miles on a motorcycle within your own country pretty much is nothing. Military deployments and business trips and even long work schedule make that sound ridiculous. And I'm totally aware that my life is very, very blessed. Being a teacher has spoiled me with the luxury of time with my family. There's people who give a lot more, especially servicemen and women, and I appreciate those guys so much. I realize that for the Gandalfs out there, my motorcycle trip is just a vacation. It's not some kind of a rite of passage, But for me, the Frodo, this was a lot more than a vacation. Like I said before, I was gambling with my life savings, with my family's well-being, just to go out and try this crazy idea to be an everyman adventure. And you've heard about that plenty of times before. So, as far as adventures go, my route was pretty short and really simple. There's no threatening places or foreign languages. There's a couple of borders on the United States, but it would be the longest time without my wife and kids. And there were some anxieties. I got a little bit of manic depression. Well, not a little bit. I've got a lot of manic depression, and I've got a lot of fear. I deal with fear a lot, so I'm definitely not the typical adventurer. I'm not the Gandalf out there. This was my first time to go on an adventure by myself, and it was interesting because I was both terrified and really excited, and I kind of felt like I was being torn in two. One tearing me in the direction of safety and comfort, and the other pulling me in the direction of adventure and excitement and whatever was out there. When I was leaving my kids, I had what could be best described as like a near-death experience. As they pulled away, I just got hit with this huge regret. And it wasn't for motorcycling or leaving on this trip, because that's my job. That's what I'm trying to make my job into. My regret was for the wasted time before the trip. It was time playing pirate games on my phone or just dinking around. My family calls it dinking around. And that's time that I'll never get back. And that hits you really, really hard. So I have this written, if time is like gold, then time with family would be platinum. Some of us are so rich with it, we have no idea what it's like to be without it. And on the other hand, those who have never experienced it have no idea what they're missing. So that hit me really, really hard. And I'll read another section from my journal. I said, this hit me so hard that I lost all sense of what I should be doing. My mind was split between prepping the bike and thinking about my kids. I would be in the garage and think, I need to get my socks on now. Then I'd go upstairs to the room and start dusting the computer, only to find myself back in the garage face-palming because I still didn't have my socks on. Anyway, long story short, I finally got the KLR 650 loaded. I tried to eat some breakfast, and I just couldn't. I was too nervous. I double-checked my list. I still had a few things to cross off, but honestly, I was just so, at the same time, pumped and fearful. My mind was in a different direction, and I just threw the list out and went. So getting on the KLR, about the bike, a fully loaded KLR is like a big fat sea lion beached on land. Just getting the kickstand up, which is such a flaw on the new gen KLRs, it's just gnarly, because every time you have to tip the KLR over to the right and then tip it back to the kickstand, and it's just, that kickstand needs to be way shorter. Anyway, this is not a documentary about kickstand. This is a documentary about this adventure. So anyway, I was like sandwiched in between my luggage in the front and the back on the tank bag, and I was wearing a backpack, And I recommend actually not wearing the backpack. Just strap that onto your bike somewhere and then just be comfortable and right there. Somebody told me that wearing a backpack's unsafe. I don't really buy that, but I do buy that it gets tiring on your shoulders. So just strap it on somewhere and then you can kind of get sandwiched up on the bike nicely and you feel good. And actually having all that stuff on you kind of like holds up your core. So here's what happened. I took off and I wanted to go see my wife one last time, so I went to her work and I kind of like clattered in there because I'm in all my gear. Leaving my wife was the hardest part of the whole morning, but it wasn't the hardest part of the whole trip. It was a really long goodbye, and I managed to get a few minutes of it on video before basically putting my helmet on and then taking it back off, and then we had more of a long goodbye without the camera on, and we had some pretty brutal tears. And again, I'm not a Gandalf. I'm the Frodo of this thing. It's hard to leave the Shire. It's really hard to get out and do something so out of your comfort zone at such a great risk in so many ways. So anyway, there were a lot of tears, and basically I asked her so many times. I was like, should I just call this whole thing off? I could just call this whole thing off. And from day one till the very last day, she encouraged me to keep going the whole time. So you guys, just so you know, the whole channel, the whole adventure, everything can be credited to my wife. So give her a thanks in the comments. But anyway, it was finally time to go. As I've heard before, you got to tear that Band-Aid off quick. So I just got on the bike and fired it up, and she disappeared behind the door to her work, and I went and got on the road. Hey, what's up, YouTubers? I just left my wife, and we had some tears. This is the beginning of the adventure. 3 weeks. That's the longest I've been away from my kids or my wife, by far. But it's the start of something amazing, so it's time to hit the road. Now, I didn't get a whole lot of footage from St. George to Utah County because I've done that trip 50 times, but I did take some back roads, and there was some beautiful scenery, which I'll show you right now. But I was really impressed with the KLR. 65 to 75 miles an hour was really no problem at all. Brent's got that big windscreen, which helps so much, and there wasn't any wind fatigue. But the seat was awful. So I was super excited to get that seat concept seat on when I got to Orem. However, I needed the seat pan from my old KLR from Mr. Duff Factor, and so Mr. Duff Factor called me up and said, "Hey, we're gonna meet," and it was fantastic. We planned on meeting at the Cracker Barrel in Springville, Utah, along I-15, and so on my way, I went through Nephi, Utah, and I had to call up my old friend Dr. Dual Sport Charles, and so he met us, and we got the bike ready. He gave me some Mountain House meals for some date nights with my wife, which was awesome. And then we rode together to Cracker Barrel, and we met Mr. Duff Factor and Mr. Rohonek and Adventure Two Wheels, which was a nice surprise because he actually lives in Oregon, so he was down in Utah riding for a little while. So it was great to meet those guys again, give them some hugs and talk motorcycles for a little bit, and just those guys. Those guys are some of my heroes, so that was a fantastic way to start the journey. Even though I kind of got escorted off of my original route of back roads and onto the highway, that was okay. There would be so much more highway in the trip that really it was an insignificant amount. And it was really awesome because, after we left the Cracker Barrel, we were riding along and they were like escorting me. I felt like this huge overloaded bomber. And they were like these fighter planes darting around me on the freeway, and all of them had their cameras rolling, and I felt like a rock star. I just felt really awesome. Like, here I am, and I got these friends, and all of this has been made possible by making YouTube videos. And one other thing is, all of this has been made possible by not only my wife, but also by Mr. Duff Factor. If you think about it, I would have no channel, I would have no bike, I would have nothing if not for him. And I would have no bike for this trip if it wasn't for Goat Cabeza. So, you guys, there's going to be a lot of times on this trip where people gave me things that I had no way of paying back. The only ways that I can pay people back at this time are to either try to pay it forward or to say, please go subscribe to these guys, because what I do have is a fantastic audience. You guys are amazing. And so when I ask you, please go and subscribe to Mr. Duff Factor and Mr. Goat Cabeza, please do that. That's all I can give to them right now. But if you do subscribe to them, you will not be disappointed. So please go do that right now. There's a link on the screen. Anyway, so it was really amazing, and they escorted me in, and then finally they kind of peeled off. They had to get back to Salt Lake City, and only Dr. Dual Sport remained, and we headed to my parents' house because, yes, on this great, crazy adventure, my first couple of days were actually spent at my parents' house. So I know that's kind of lame, but it was kind of their last-ditch effort to turn me back. Or at least I thought it would be that way, but when I got there, they were so excited and very, very encouraging. And they want me to go for these dreams just as much as anybody else. So they were very supportive, and it was really cool. It's great to spend time with my mom and dad, especially my dad. He recently retired, and we just got time to hang out and chill and talk about past travels and where we wanted to go in the future, and it was a beautiful thing. So anyway, I got a few things done. I installed the Seat Concept seat. I installed a tool tube, and then basically the final day, I got on the road with Val, and that's been the footage that you've been seeing the whole time. And man, that was an amazing ride. I put that ride on Map My Tracks, so you can kind of follow along with the route that Val and I took, starting basically in Provo, Utah, and wrapping clear around pretty much a lot of the trail on dirt roads, wrapping down to Springville, and then back clear up through Midway, and then up over by all the ski resorts and down into Salt Lake City. And then I wrapped back through the Alpine Loop in American Fork Canyon. And you guys, talk about an amazing ride. That ride took 10 hours, and so much of it was great because Val was just a great riding partner. We had the Santas hooked up and just talked motorcycles and life, and you know, I learned so much from Val. So thank you so much for riding with me, Val. That was amazing. One of the coolest parts of the beginning part of this adventure is I went to the tree where my wife and I got married. And we used to go there every single anniversary, but since we moved to southern Utah, we haven't been there. So that was nice to visit that place. This is where my wife and I got married 10 years ago, plus a few days. We got married in the middle of February, and it's freezing cold. It's the coldest day of the year, but this is the place. This is the place where we got married, and this was the start of a lot of beautiful memories together. So. Of course, when we got married, this whole place was covered in snow. This is a good place. It reminds me of my wife, so it's only day 3, but I already miss her like crazy. And right now, I'm only about 200, maybe 300 miles away. I'm about to be a whole lot more miles away, so. Love you, Jess. And then it was really cool because I just got to go to this little lake and just hang out by a lake and watch people. And, well, that sounds creepy. But I just got to watch, like, this dad and his daughter fish, and kind of made friends with them and talked to them about the journey, and you know, just watched people paddleboarding and fed the ducks. And you know, it was just kind of this surreal experience to be part of a situation but not really an active participant, just to sit there and watch. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. That covers the first leg of the journey to Utah. You know, there's a lot more coming in this adventure. There's a lot more stories to tell. I hope I haven't bored you too bad in this first one. What I'm going to do is focus a lot on emotion. I don't want to really do a ride report. I want to tell you about my feelings, because I think that people know what it's like to ride a motorcycle. They don't know how it feels to be in my shoes, to be in a father's shoes, taking a risk and riding a motorcycle. So that's what it's all about. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. So much love to you guys. eveRide out.